Hi everyone, welcome to Watch It Play Table Talk. My name is Rodney Smith, and I have your responses right here to the question, do you buy toys for your toys? In other words, do you purchase or make some enhancements to upgrade the components that come with your game, just to bring that something extra to the gameplay? This is really less of a discussion topic and more of a sharing one. So I'm going to read through a selection of different people's responses, some really great, interesting ideas here. Anna Lice in My Pants says, I work in a research lab, so I borrowed some Petri dishes and radioactive labeling tape to give my Pandemic game some more character. I didn't follow through on it, but I think Pandemic was the first game that I remember thinking, oh, this game could use some upgraded components. They've actually since released a new version of it. I think this upgraded pretty much all the components. But, you know, having Petri dishes for all the disease cubes just felt like it would be so in theme and so functional. Great idea. Brooded Bush 00 says, I have used things like what you're talking about in my Pathfinder role-playing games I run. Having physical treasures or keys adds more weight to how the story might be told. My gaming group have been spoiled with these sorts of trinkets. What a great idea. Role-playing games, which typically have no components, sometimes you have maybe a rule book and maybe a map or some miniatures, but other than that, most of the gameplay takes place in your head. So what a great way to help bring that to life. Maybe you bring a burnt treasure map or some extra coins or tokens. Maybe there's a puzzle people have to solve in the game, but you have some kind of physical puzzle they can actually feel and manipulate at the table. So great place to upgrade and just bring in other components to. Death by Storm 42 says, we also recently picked up I Dark Overlord, and to show who the Overlord was, I got out my black cape. Costumes! I love it. What a great idea. And this reminded me, one time I had Andrea and a few of her friends over to play Mansions of Madness. And we all dressed up in costume for it, depicting our different characters. You're seeing it on the screen right now. I, of course, was the Deranged Overlord, which didn't require a whole lot of acting. Vashigi Terabi says, I like to add functional enhancements such as poker chips, dice towers, counter trays, plexiglass to keep paper mats protected and flat, tweezers when dealing with smaller hexes or stacking. Wait, I'm really starting to sound like one of those wacky wargamers, aren't I? Sounding like, too late, you already are. Vashigi runs a YouTube channel where she learns, teaches, and plays war games, and you reminded me of something else that I've done before. For Memoir 44, if you haven't played it before, it's a board game, and then there are terrain tiles that you place on top of it to customize the game board that you play on. And then, of course, you place all your miniatures on top of that, and you move them around, which, of course, shifts those terrain tiles. You bump them, it moves all of them. It can be a little bit tricky to manage. So I went to a windshield shop, and I got them to cut out a custom-sized piece of plexiglass, which I could then lay over top of the board once all the terrain's on there. Now when I move my miniatures, it's not touching anything but the glass. Very functional, great idea. M. Jesuel Demoisin says, I know you already did a talk back on storage, but the way a game is stored can be much more than a functional consideration. For example, I have my Dreadfleet game in a pirate's chest and use a hollow atlas book for the cards to go in. That's awesome! Mr. Mechanoise says, a playmat for Android Netrunner, I love designing them. I love this idea. Now, most of the time I've seen playmats for games like Magic the Gathering, but now more and more people are making their own custom playmats for other board and card games. So this is just a way for you to organize the table space in front of you, help you remember, okay, here's where I put my cards. Maybe you have some rules reminders around the playmats. Super idea. Our Soldier says, I made a really cheap dice tower out of a Kleenex box. Listen, no one said the upgrades had to be expensive. Micah Forrest said, one thing I use on miniatures to show their condition is different colored hair ties. Works great. I've seen this done. So in a game where maybe the different characters take certain kinds of conditions, maybe they're on fire, you put a little red hairband around the base of that miniature. Maybe they've been stunned, so you put like a gray one around it. So if you don't like the tokens, or maybe the game doesn't come with tokens to help represent that, here's a great way to do it, especially used in role-playing games. Bosteen says, I built myself a 3D printer a while back and use that quite a bit. First of all, congratulations on that. My significant other's favorite color is purple, so I tend to print meeples and markers in that color for games like Carcassonne for her to use. Brilliant. Nice move there. Listen, I tell you, as 3D printers become more and more mainstream and more affordable, don't you just think this is going to dominate how board game prototypes are made? exactly this, making enhancements for your games. Listen, you want to replace that damaged cardboard token? Maybe you want to replace all the tokens of the game. Now you can print out these nice, sturdy plastic pieces. Print and play games. Think about how those are going to get enhanced. Print and play, literal 3D elements. I'm sure we're going to see those files on Board Game Geek shared for people to be able to use and create themselves. It's going to definitely change the landscape. Keith Collins writes, I wonder who coined the term D&Deeples. Cool guy, I bet. Yes, Keith, a very cool guy indeed, and it was you who coined that term, and you deserve the credit for it. Great idea. James Burns says, I have replaced the paper money in most of my games with poker chips, for they are more solid and make a nice clinking sound. Yeah, listen, I don't have any hobby games that use paper money, but I know Lords of Vegas is one that does, and definitely get rid of that paper money. Replace it with poker chips. So much more fun to play with. TommyBoy500 says, I don't buy extra game components for the simple fact that I'd rather spend my money on other things. Tommy, fair enough. Matt O'Kenzie says, yeah, I can remember when I was about 14 or 15 in design tech class, or wood shop as some of us might know it. I wasn't allowed to use the wood burning tool, but I did, so I had detention for it. And as punishment, Mr. Whittle, yes, ironic as his surname is, made me do a wooden tile copy of Carcassonne. I can't be the only person thinking right now that is an amazing punishment. How awesome is that? I hope you went back and thanked Mr. Whittle for that punishment. Mr. Whittle. Oh, that's too much. Barry Doublet says, my only guilty pleasure is my dice tower. I hate dice that roll on the floor. Do they count, or do you re-roll them? Great question, Barry. Listen, if our dice roll off of the table onto the floor, we always re-roll them. Even if the dice land on the table, but they're on top of a token and they're just slightly slanted, we re-roll those as well. If it's not flat, we take it back. That's our Smith rule. That way there's never any debate about which dice need to be re-rolled and what the dice are actually saying. And yes, dice towers are a great way of solving that problem. So in the spirit of this topic, this week I actually upgraded some components for one of my games. The Game of Thrones board game 2nd edition comes with these tokens to represent some very important elements of the gameplay. We have a sword, we have the Iron Throne, and a crow. And at Indigo, which is a bookstore here in Canada, I found some actual Game of Thrones souvenirs, which would normally be way too expensive. But they were 50% off. I couldn't resist. Look at this. We have a Game of Thrones sword. It's actually metal, painted, looks really, really nice. It's going to be very substantial when you have this element in the game. And I found the Hand of the King symbol from the books. Now, I'm not sure if this will represent and replace the crow, or maybe the Iron Throne itself. I don't know. I'd love to find an Iron Throne piece. If you guys have any ideas for that, please let me know. Or even something to replace the crow, in which case I'll use this for the throne. Anyway, listen, I want to thank you guys, as always, for all of your responses, but we got some great video responses as well, and I'm going to show you a sampling of a few of them. If you'd like to see the full videos, go back to our Table Talk episode. In the video responses, all these videos are listed there completely. You can watch them if you want to. But until the next episode, thanks for watching.
This is going to be short, and it might end very abruptly because I have a 3-year-old and a 11-week-old, and they really cut into gaming time. Basically, anytime I get a new game, I go on Board Game Geek and I print out whatever sort of player aid I can, and I try to use like thick cardstock and laminate them because I like that, and made a lot of like tuck boxes for things. I actually made hive pieces. Oh, baby crying. Hold on.
I have a bit of a problem when it comes to things like, for example, Summoner Wars, in which case we have custom tuck boxes made for all of the factions with the Plaid Hat official faction dice to go with them, just because we have to have that. And then for Arkham Horror, we have a custom wooden box with our own homemade tuck boxes for each of the decks of cards to make sure the cards are all nice and happy. We close that up, and we of course paint an elder sign on our box. Lords of Vegas is a great game, but it comes with garbage paper money, so you have to have dedicated poker chips to keep in that box so that you can play your Lords of Vegas in style.
Hi Rodney, this is Rick from Boxes of Lights, and this is Defenders of the Realm. And in this box we have one of my most favourite components, and that's these little crystals. And I was thinking, in response to your video about pimping your games, I would love it if a lot more of my games had crystals like this. So as a quick tip for your viewers, if you go on to site like Amazon, and if you search for fish tank crystal stones, so these little crystals that go in the bottom of fish tanks, I bought a great big bag of these, and I'm going to pimp out my gamers with these crystals. And look, they're exactly the same as the ones you find in Defenders of the Realm. These are some nice purple ones. Pretty cool, huh? So there's a little tip. Fish tank gravel.
Okay, back. He's doing okay. But as far as making original things for games, I've done a couple things. One was with Arkham Horror. That was the first big game I had, and I liked it a lot, and I went on Board Game Geek, and I found a file that lets you play sort of the game from the Ghostbusters theme, and I printed out the player cards. I made one for, you know, each guy, and then it's got the two villains that you can use, and then again I used the little woodsy things, the balsa wood, and made the little characters for each one. They're double-sided. I tried to use like some black felt to make it look like it actually fit in the game, and then it added a couple new bad guys as well. And the baby's crying again. I'll be right back.
I bought myself this. Very cyber looking skull, and if you take the top off it, you will find bone coloured dice, with the number 1 being a representation of the storage of the skull that they're stored in. So they're the ones I will use for playing Relic.
Okay, this is A Few Acres of Snow from Martin Wallace, and it came with very cheap plastic tokens for the money, and I replaced it with these coins, which look nicer and are more fun to play with. Flashpoint Fire Rescue comes with these wooden cubes, these black cubes, to show if a wall is damaged, 1 cube, or destroyed, 2 cubes. I didn't like the look of it, and I made these little markers, which is now a damaged wall and a destroyed wall. For the game Dreadball by Mantic Games, I designed my own pitches. This is a fantasy pitch I did in Photoshop and mounted it on cardboard, and it folds like this. And my science fiction pitch, which looks like this.
Today I'm just going to talk about one game, and I'm going to talk about Mice and Mystics. I like the game so much I've never painted miniatures or, you know, had any desire to do anything like that. So I looked around and I found paintedfigs.com, who's actually located in Sri Lanka. So I contacted them about having them painted. But these are nice. These do the trick for me, and these are very affordable. And I was actually surprised, you know, what the shipping cost they quoted me to have these sent over to me. So I just wanted to show everybody, you know, what I got there. A little bit of bragging, a little bit of show and tell.
Run for Your Life Candyman here. I went on a Smirk and Dagger's website, and they have a person that's doing these. But anyways, essentially, you have a full-scale little ginger plushie here, and you get these little pins, and when you take damage in the game, you basically will be inflicting pain to your victim. So you put a little pin in there when you take damage, and when you take the amount of damage you need to take, you can just rip the limb off that loses the body. To me, that added a little bit of flavor to the game. It's kind of like when you're ripping off the, because it was paper sheets, but now you actually have a physical representation that you can just rip off and hand to a person when they do the final damage to the victim.
Okay, back again. I do actually want to say I am a good dad. he's supposed to be sleeping right now. I'm just like, he's not just in another room like crying and like making this this silly video. But it's not silly. It's very serious. But my wife did tell me the moment I started making videos about games and posting them online that I had gone too far, so don't tell her. And the last thing that I made, which is the thing that really made me want to make a video response, is a dice box thing like you have. And it's basically, I totally saw yours and copied your idea. I went to a store, was just looking for a picture frame to be able to do this with, and just, you know, it's kind of deep, but I liked having I wanted to find felt that was the same color, but I actually kept the glass in the front, and I made a little design. Get that out of there. So designed this for it, and this actually sits on our bookshelf, just kind of like this. And so when I grab it when we're playing a game, people are like, "Wait, why are you grabbing a picture frame?" I'm like, "Bam, dice box! Now they won't go all over the place." And like, that's awesome, weirdo.